It is the age-old question that's been asked many, many times, but we've never actually had a true answer. Maybe because there is no answer, but I thought this video would be fun to talk about the pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages of a modern PC and console because, I mean, really, they've changed over the past several years. It used to be a pretty clear-cut answer, I would say, but maybe not anymore. So let's talk about it. Possibly the biggest factor in anyone's decision to buy a PC or console is obviously the price. If you can't afford it, you can't get it. But is it cheaper to get a PC or a console? Well, it's a little bit different depending on how you look at it. I would say that buying a PC is more expensive up front. Because with a console, you might spend $300 to $400 or even $500. But on a PC, if you were to spend that much, it probably wouldn't be able to do much better. You'd really have to go probably around $600 to $700, I would say, to get a good PC. If you wanted to go enthusiast, it would be even more, at least $1,000 probably. And then the top end of PC would just be as much money as you can throw at it. So why do people usually say that it's cheaper to get a PC? Well, I think in most terms, they're thinking about the graphics card prices. I mean, you can get a $200 graphics card that has way more computing power than your average console. But the thing is, you have to buy the rest of the computer as well. If you already have a computer that is half decent and you want to upgrade a better graphics card, yeah, it would almost certainly be cheaper to go with PC gaming and just upgrade the card. But if you want to build it from scratch, you gotta buy a good PSU, power supply, you gotta get the RAM, you gotta get the motherboard, the CPU, maybe even a CD drive, I don't know about these days. Then you gotta think about the monitor. I mean, there's a lot you gotta go into. You don't probably have to get everything, you already have some of it, I'm sure. But with a console, it's all in one package. You buy the console, it's got everything you need. You just hook it up to whatever TV you have, and it'll work. So I think in terms of price, yeah, the actual total cost of going PC would be a little bit more, but you still get more power out of it. So overall, if you're willing to spend the extra bit of money on a PC, you would still be getting more bang for your buck. But if your only concern is spending as little as possible, you really can't beat going console. Now, if you're looking at the long-term prospects of price, then yeah, PC probably is also better for that. Because used games on PC, you can play them forever, so you can buy them cheap forever and they just get cheaper over time. Especially with Steam sales where they sell it for a fraction of the price and people still play years-old games. They're still playable on PC, whereas on console, if it's an older generation, sometimes they're not even backwards compatible. Also, if you go to buy a game through an online store like Xbox Live and that sort of thing, a lot of times they sell it for the full price way long after it's released, even old games. And if you go buy it used at GameStop or something like that, they even sell it for like $5 below the retail price. Whereas if you get it on PC, then an older game is gonna be way cheaper. Whereas on console, that might not be a guarantee. Oh, and you can't forget about the price of online multiplayer services. There's Xbox Live and then there's PlayStation Premium, whereas on PC, it's pretty much always free with very few exceptions, like if it's a MMO or something like that. But what about the selection of games? That's probably the most important thing. Well, on PC, it's undeniable that you have way bigger selection on PC. You get most of the AAA games with very few console exclusives. They have some these days, but not many as they used to. And you get a lot of indie games as well that just don't ever make it onto console because of development costs. So you're gonna get a lot of old games in addition to the new games, whereas on console, a lot of times you just can't even get the old games at all. Whereas on PC, you can get games way back to the 90s and still play them. And like I said, most of the time these AAA game manufacturers are going to release on all consoles. They know that PC gaming is super popular these days. The days of only releasing on console are pretty much over. It still happens, but they're going to probably release a port at least eventually. And with the only exception I would think is if it's a single console platform exclusive like Halo or The Last of Us or something like that, where it's only on one specific console, but you're never going to really see a game anymore that is only released on consoles but not on PC. Now, considering a PC specifically, a lot of people say, well, the best thing is to build a PC. But that's not always an advantage, and I don't even think it's that much cheaper these days. A lot of people are worried like, oh, I want to go into PC gaming, I have to build it. No, you really don't. And I think a lot of times you can actually go into like Micro Center and get a cheaper PC pre-built than you could ever build yourself. The reason I've talked about before is manufacturers typically get these bulk prices for hardware that is way cheaper because they buy so many of them, whereas if you're just buying one, you're going to pay way more. So manufacturers that are pre-building computers can sell it at a way cheaper price. So it's not always necessarily cheaper to build a PC, especially if you're within the $500 to $1,000 range. I would definitely not assume that you have to build it. Now, if you're getting into the enthusiast and super high end, yeah, it probably is cheaper to just build it yourself, especially if it's like a workstation, because a lot of times once you get into that price range, a lot of these PC manufacturers who will build you a custom PC, they're charging extra just because they know they can, because people are willing to drop that much money already. But if you're willing to just spend the extra bit of time to build the computer to your own specs, then you can do it for a lot cheaper. And building a PC isn't even that hard. I mean, it's like more complicated Legos. You don't have to actually assemble any of the components yourself. You just stick them in place, stick it into the PC case, and that's it. It's not very difficult if you can read a manual. Of course, there are people out there who do want just the easiest option possible. They don't want to have to deal with anything. They don't want to have to worry about whether their games are compatible. They don't want to have to worry about if their game's going to run well because they don't have enough RAM. They don't want to have to upgrade. They don't want to have to do this or that. And yet, consoles are undeniably easier, even though PCs aren't particularly difficult at all, I would say. But if you have no idea how to use computers, a console is a very attractive option. Though with anything, that easiness comes at a price, which I think in this case is customizability. Just by the nature of things, you're going to have to offer less options if you wanted to make it easier. Otherwise, people are just going to complain that it's too hard, there's too many options. You just want it to work and do everything for you. Whereas on PC, you get mods, so you get custom maps, custom game modes for the games that allow it. Not everything does, but there are plenty that do. But not just with the games themselves, but also customizability. You get to choose like voice programs to use along with it, like Skype or Ventrilo or TeamSpeak, whatever people use these days. You can choose all that, whereas on console, you just gotta use whatever system they give you. And I don't think I have to really explain this one too much. You guys know that you can really install anything you want, any type of program on your computer. You just can't on a console. That's very obvious. And next, we really can't forget about upgrading your hardware. That's probably the biggest advantage of having a PC, is if your computer starts to slow down and it's not as good as it used to be and it can't run the modern games, you can typically just pop out the graphics card, put in a new one for way cheaper than it would be to buy a whole nother console. For like 200 bucks, you can get a pretty good AMD card, especially with the new lines they're releasing that are amazing. And the only exception would be the CPU. It's pretty hard to upgrade the CPU. You'd have to really upgrade everything else as well. But, you can go with the more RAM, you can go with the more hard drive space and SSD, everything. Though on the flip side, to be fair, you could argue that there's no need to upgrade on a console at all, because obviously the console manufacturer is going to say this game needs to run on the console, so all the developers are forced to accommodate that. So if you don't want to have to worry about upgrading ever, then yeah, the console is the easier choice. But if you want to actually stay up to date and get the best graphics on the newest games and use the games the way that the developer really wanted to, with the best graphics, best performance, then a PC is the only way to really do that. Otherwise, you have these consoles that are years old with years old hardware, then the developers kind of have to dumb it down. But not only can you upgrade the hardware of the computer itself, you can't forget about all the accessories. You can upgrade your mouse, your keyboard, your monitor. You can get a high refresh rate monitor. You can't really do that with a console. Obviously you can get a better TV, but for refresh rate, there are so many gaming specific monitors that would be useless on a console because they typically are locked frame rate. Whereas if you have a super high-end PC and you can pump that frame rate out, this is a 240 hertz monitor. You can't get that on a console. You can't even get a 120 hertz monitor on a console. Or if you don't even care about refresh rate, you could do the other option and just go with high resolution and get a 4K monitor or something. And yeah, the new consoles do support 4K gaming, but not every game supports 4K. So if you're playing on a PC, you can really play at any resolution you want. And you can typically play it as high as you want to go. I mean, games allow upscaling these days, so even if the developer was developing on a 4K monitor or a 1080p monitor, if you have a 12K monitor and your graphics card can push it that hard, and the developer didn't put a restriction on it, which I don't know why they would on a PC, you could do whatever you want with it. Alright, so now we talked a lot about the hardware and the consoles themselves, but what about playing the game? What's the experience like on there? And I think one major thing you have to consider is that on a PC, you can't deny that the skill ceiling is way higher. You can potentially get way better at a game on PC than you can with a console, just inherently from the input controls. With a controller, you're using thumbsticks, very imprecise, okay, with a mouse and keyboard, very precise. I think there was a story I heard one time where Microsoft was trying to experiment with cross-platform play. They wanted to see if it was Gears of War or something like that. What would happen if they allowed playing over on Xbox Live between an Xbox player and PC players? So what they did, by the rumor, is that they got the best Xbox players and they put them against mediocre, average PC players, and the PC players beat them every time. The PC players were able to beat the best Xbox gamers, and it's just because the controls are a lot better. You can do a flick shot across and be very precise with the muscle memory and get it right there, whereas if you're on a joystick, it has to be very slow. It has like aim assist. Like, come on. So especially with competitive games like Counter-Strike or Overwatch or whatever, you're gonna definitely get better at PC, and there's just gonna be a limit on how good and fun it can be on a console if it's trying to be a competitive game. You just have to go with PC in that case. But here's another pro for consoles. You can't forget that they're also good at home entertainment purposes. Like, yeah, PC can do anything you want, but it's not always in the ideal setting. Like, say you want to watch Netflix or something. You can obviously do it on your PC, but would you rather be laying down on your couch, sitting back, or in your office chair, watching on a small monitor? So in that case, I think it's actually better to like consume other media besides just games on a console. They typically have all sorts of different apps for Netflix and Amazon Video, and of course it just streams on your TV as if you're just watching cable. So even if you don't have a cable box, an Xbox would probably be a better replacement just because you can do so much streaming in one box. And of course, if you wanted to, you could stream stuff from your PC to your TV if you wanted to. That's obviously possible, but it's a little bit more work. You have to install a bunch of software on your PC that's going to stream it, whereas on a console, it's all built in. It goes directly to the console from whatever services. So that's definitely an advantage, is the ease of use isn't just for the games, but all the other entertainment services, which are actually probably a little bit more difficult than the average person would be willing to learn how to do if you're trying to get your PC on your TV. Of course, they do make home theater PCs, but then you gotta kind of dedicate it, you gotta put it there, or at least with Plex or something, you still gotta download it, organize it on your computer. It's a lot of work. Not to mention the fact that consoles are also very intuitive. I mean, if you have people over, friends or whatever, you're hosting a party, everyone could pretty much figure out how to use a console. It's just on your TV, people press the button on the controller, it starts up, they can say, oh, well, let's put on music, or let's play a game, or whatever, as opposed to, hey, let's go into my office and all stand around the computer, you know what I mean? It's a little bit better for social settings within your house as opposed to just online. So I think my last point, which I've kind of built upon this the whole time, but I think that consoles are way better for very casual experiences. If you're not worried about playing Counter-Strike where you're very competitive and you just want to play games, relaxing on your couch, all that sort of thing, consoles are better in that respect. If you're an enthusiast, whether you like computers, you like playing games a lot, I think you're gonna get a better experience from PC just because you can do so much more with it and configure your experience to the way you want to do it. And if you are an enthusiast and you still want that casual experience every once in a while, you can get something like a Steam Link box where it streams to your TV anyway. So you can kind of do both with the Steam Big Picture, for example. You can still get both, but of course it's a little bit more work, but really not that much more. But if you only care about casual stuff, console is going to be better in that respect. So I think those are all my points. Why don't we recap quickly? Let's talk about the price. I think in the short term, it's cheaper to get a console, but in the long term, probably PC. You're gonna get the most bang for your buck. A PC is gonna last longer as well. With a console, they're definitely easier, but with PC, the other trade-off is you get way more customizability, you get way more options. If you wanna do something on a PC, you just have to download the right software to do it. Whereas if a console doesn't have a feature, you can't do it at all. So as always, this is just something that you guys probably already know about. I'm sure you already have your mind made up. Some of you have both, like I have a console and PC. I don't really use the console that often, except for entertainment purposes, and that's why I think that's a big thing to consider. If I'm playing a game, it's usually on the PC. But I'm not trying to tell you that PC is better in every way. That's the whole point of this video. It depends on what you want to use it for. So I think that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to let me know down in the comments what you thought. If you want to keep watching, I'll put some other videos right here. You can just click on those. And if you want to subscribe, I make new videos every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Should be worth it. So again, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.